In order to make sure that when you come to an ISP meeting, that you talk about those unplanned scheduling days. So in any MSS site, you have those unscheduled times. These are services that are not otherwise covered nor can be defined on a typical staffing pattern. They should be applied to the month in which the service will be used. An unscheduled service is not a reserve or a cushion to dump services and cost. If predictable, you must use the staffing pattern schedule. Things a provider can track to help with current and future planning. Those are those appointments, those refusal days, those planned days off, calamity days. And then make sure you're asking, are these predictable or arbitrary? If they are arbitrary, then plan for at least one day a month. If they're predictable, then it needs to be applied to the calendar.
So providers, let's talk about some of these specifically. So in here it says unscheduled services is not a reserve or a cushion. I still hear the word reserve all the time. Unscheduled time is defined as time that we know that will occur that is not otherwise in a staffing pattern. So typically, those are appointment days, those are refusal days for people not going somewhere during the day when they typically do. Those are calamity days. There are a number of things that happen in people's lives. We know they will happen, but we don't necessarily know exactly what day they're going to happen on. So let's go through each one of these. I'm going to tell providers right now, you guys are the ones who have this information. The SSAs do not. I'm going to say that again. Providers are the ones with the information, not SSAs. If you think about what has historically happened to services over time, we now have approximately 85 to 90% of all the non-medical transportation being provided by private providers, no longer county boards. We have 75 to 80% of all the day services being provided by private providers, not county boards. So if you think about it, they don't know when people go and when they don't go. You are the only ones that have that information. To make it even more difficult, we have instances in the state, I won't name the county, but in one county I know of, individuals may go to 5 different day programs each week. And they may have roommates, 2 or 3 of them, who go to 5 other different day programs a week. This becomes pretty complicated when it comes to being able to make sure that you have the staffing ratios and the correct amount of unscheduled time for each individual. Let's start with the easy one. Calamity days. We all know they're going to happen. We live in Ohio. We know it could be 5 days a year. We know it could be, as it was 5 or 6 years ago, 22 days a year, which is typically an anomaly, but for the most part, it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 10 days a year, depending upon what part of the state that you live in. Obviously, if you're in the snow belt, probably going to be a few more. If you're down around the Ohio River, likely to be a few less. If you're around a metropolitan area, likely to be a few less. If you're in a rural area, might take days for the snowplows to get there. So every situation is going to be different. But what we do know is that they will most likely happen in December, January, February, and March, and every once in a while in April will surprise us. So use past experience, look at when the days have typically happened in the past, and apply them to the calendar during those months. An example I always use for 5 days is 1 day in December, 2 in January, 1 in February, and 1 in March. That may not be your pattern, but think about it in those terms. Let's go to the next easier one, appointments. Some appointments we know when they're going to occur, some appointments we don't. So we do know that Someone might go to the dentist 2 times a year. If they're going to go to the dentist 2 times a year and they go in June, then it's likely that they're also going to go in December, because it's typically every 6 months. So for the appointments that we reasonably can predict, we should put them in the month that they are going to occur. So an example I use is you might have 6 appointments that you know when they're going to happen, and then you have about 6 appointments that you have no clue when they're going to happen. You put the 6 months in the months that you believe they will occur. You take the other 6, and just for example's sake, and say an average appointment takes 3 hours from the time you leave the house, go to the doctor's office, read Sports Illustrated or Good Housekeeping, and get home, about 3 hours. You're going to have 18 hours a year. Spread that out evenly throughout the year, because you don't know when it's going to happen. When we give the examples of the plus and minus 3%, we will show you that that will likely not have an effect on it, because if you're putting about an hour and a half in each month, that's not going to push you over or under. Planned days off, again, by definition, are a lot easier to know in advance because they are planned. Put them in the month that they're going to occur. The biggest one is refusal days, or days that people may get sick, things that that may cause someone not to participate in either work or a day program that they've chosen to go to, and we don't know exactly when it's going to happen. We should be looking at patterns in the past. You may serve individuals that have more medical issues, and those will tend to be during time periods when it's really hot outside or it's really cold outside, or it may be haphazard. Every person will be different. So to the best of your ability, try to apply those during the months that you believe that will happen, but if there is no pattern whatsoever, then evenly distribute them throughout the year. We're going to say it over and over and over again in this presentation. Everything is by the month. In the past, we took all of these things and we put them in a great big long span, and just so long as we had them in there, everything worked out okay, because the span was a much longer time period. The spans are now 1 month. If you don't get them in the correct month, you're going to be over 1 month, under the next month, over the next month, under the next month. That's the volatility that we're trying to take out of the system.